We want to talk about mentoring and parenting. And I want to share a quotation that helps us to begin with the end in mind. And it's from Miles Monroe. And he says, "If what you learn, achieve, accomplish, accumulate dies with you, then you are a generational failure. No matter how great you may have been, if you don't produce a successor, you are a failure." That makes me very uncomfortable. That I can succeed in many, many areas and in many, many things, but if I don't pass this on to another person, I am a generational failure. Is anybody uncomfortable with that? Good. I think we're set, since we're uncomfortable. Paul tells Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2, "You've got it. You've heard things from me. You've worked with me. I want you to entrust all that you've learned from me to faithful men who will teach others also." Paul was looking at what he had done to reach the third generation. And so Paul became a successful, and he served his generation and continues to serve other generations. Practically, what does it mean for us? You say, "I'm in business," okay? Are you using kingdom values to run your business? And they're helping you deal with people and succeed. If you don't take these kingdom values and pass them on and embody them in a person who can use them and pass them on to another, then all your value stops with you and it doesn't reach the next generation. That's what that quotation is saying. And that's what Paul did with Timothy. As a parent, if all my values, all my gifts, all my knowledge doesn't pass on to my children, then who suffers? My children suffer, my grandchildren suffer, and my great-grandchildren suffer, down to the third generation. That's how serious this is. Mentoring is actually producing a successor. For our lives to really count in the way that I have described, we have to intentionally produce a successor. We have to take all that we have and pass it on to other people. The best context to do this in is within relationships that you have in your natural settings and in your family. This is where it happens naturally. Okay? Now, I talked about being intentional. Intentional means I know what I'm doing and I know where it's going. Because we mentor all the time. Whether we realize it or not, we're mentoring all the time. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad character ruins," sorry, let me just take that. "Bad company corrupts good morals." Okay? So, whatever company I am in, the kind of person I am affects those around me. So I am mentoring whether I realize it or not. There was a friend of mine who used to tell his son, "Do you see those 5 friends of yours? You are going to be the average of all of them. You can never rise above the average of the people that you associate with." Okay? And so all the time it's happening. What does that mean? What it means is that what we bring into our relationships is important. What I am with my friends, with my co-workers, with my boss, with my spouse, with my children, matters. Because it's going to affect their character, it's going to affect their destiny. And so you are impacting destiny with the people that you meet, whether you realize it or not. And so we need to be intentional about it. What do we bring into relationships? I want to share with you 3 stories that captures, sort of the breadth of our relationships. I want to start with a mother and the children. When our daughter was 18 years old, applying for medical school, she was asked, write an essay of the person who has impacted you the most. And you know what she did? She was so excited. She couldn't just wait to write this essay. She knew it so well. She had seen many television and movies heroes, and she had read many books because she was an avid reader. And you know who she chose to write about? She said, I will write about my mother. She wrote about Mbida because she said, my mother is my mentor. My mother is my support. Now, Mbida is not perfect. Okay? My daughter once said, my mother is growing. My mother has stopped screaming. And the men looked at their wives and thought, there is hope. Okay? My mother is growing. Okay? She recognized that, and that was the important thing. Mbide was committed to growing, and still is committed to growing. Mbide was committed to confronting issues with her daughter. She was confronted with, and was committed to teaching. She was committed to walking with her. So in spite of her weaknesses and her failings and their fights, this was her mentor. She was real, and she could pattern her life after her. Now that's what you want your daughter to do, to write an essay about you and not somebody else that she's read about. There's a friend of mine who's called Tom, and his son is called Amani. Amani had his children home, his friends home over a Father's Day half-term. And they went out to dinner. And the children started sharing good things about their dads. Amani happened to be a prefect amongst his friends. And what his friends said is that when Amani is doing his duties and he comes into a difficulty, he asks himself, what would my daddy do in this situation? That's what he asked himself. Close relationships. What would my daddy do? It means he had watched his dad in various situations. I know Tom. Tom is your average guy. He is not fabulously wealthy. He does not appear on TV. He does not trend in social media. But what did Tom do? Tom was committed to being present in the life of his son, being involved, teaching him all he could, putting him ahead. Tom was committed to disciplining his son, and he didn't get away with much. What are we saying? His son, Amani, was looking for a real person who could lead him, and he found it in his father. Now that's what you want to be with your children, that they would not look out there for other heroes. The heroes are right at home. The heroes are you. They're the ones that they're looking at, and not anybody else. But you need to be there and need to be the right kind of person. Let me tell you the last story, which is a general one, about my own discipleship. When I was about 20 years old, getting into university, I began to grow in my relationship with God for the first time. I started reading the Word in quiet time. I started praying, memorizing Scripture. I began to feel like God was real in my life. I learned to witness and share my faith with people. I began to feel that at the university, my life was counting in the lives of others. How did this happen? Did I just wake up one day and begin to feel these things? No. There was somebody in my life, a peer of mine, who really accepted me with all my insecurities, who was really interested in me, And I remember once people cracked a joke at my expense, and everybody laughed, including the teachers. You know what? He did not laugh. He stood with me in my embarrassment. I concluded, this man is for me. This man will stand with me. He cared with me. He supported me in everything. And we walked together. He spent time with me. He did things with me. He invested in me. He was not perfect. He had his problems. He had his issues. We had our differences. But his life had clarity. He had a passion for God. He was going somewhere. He loved Jesus, and he wanted people to know Jesus and follow him. And I said, I want to be like that person. Therefore, I began patterning my life against the things that he was doing. And so, he deliberately mentored me, discipled me. I want us to look at what the scriptures have to say about some of these things. And I'm going to share 3 passages. And the first one is discipleship and discipling others is a command. Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20, referred to as the Great Commission, says, "Go therefore and make disciples, teaching them to observe all I have commanded you." What does that mean? It means discipleship is not an option. It's not something we can choose to do or not to do. It's a command that can be obeyed or disobeyed. Whatever God has taught me to the point of obedience, I need to be obeying. I need to take that and pass it on to other people. When Jesus left the earth, he had only 12 people, and he had poured his life out into them. And he expects us to do the same with others. And so, we need to lead people to the point of transformation. And that verse says, teaching them to do. And so it's about doing. We walk with people until they obey to a point of transformation. Programs are good, knowledge is good, but practice and transformation is what we need to see in the lives of people. This is not a thing that is great that makes my life count. Yes, it makes my life count, and I feel the satisfaction. But it's something that we have to do if our lives are going to count in this generation and the next. Or else, in my spiritual life, I can be successful, but I leave a gap in my generation, in the generation of my children and my friends, and the next 3 generations will suffer. That's the first point. The second point from the scriptures shows us that we mirror what God looks like. And I just stop for a moment. It is my responsibility, it is your responsibility to mirror, to reflect what God exactly looks like. That scares me. It's an awesome responsibility to mirror what God looks like. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, it says, "You know how we lived among you for your sake, and you became imitators of us and of the Lord." In Philippians chapter 3, verse 17, it says, "You have us as a model." God is not going to show you or show your children or show your friends himself, this is what I look like. But he's counting on me, he's counting on you to reflect what he looks like. That's what mentoring is about. That's what parenting is about. Reflecting what God looks like, especially at close quarters like that. So what does that mean? I don't live for who I am and who I want to be. I don't live for my preferences. What do? I deliberately choose to live a godly life. For what? For the sake of others, so they may know what God looks like. A few questions come to mind as we begin to think about reflecting who God is like. When Bidel looks at me, when my children look at me, and your friends look at you, do they begin to see what God looks like? Glimpses of what He looks like? That is your assignment. That's my assignment in this life, to reflect who God looks like and live in such a way that I do that. Or when they listen to me, do they see pride? Do they see cowardice? Do they see fear? Do they see jokes that are not right? Do they hear bad language? And if I may really put it crudely, do they begin to see glimpses of the devil? Do they see that old man still thriving in my life? That's not how it's meant to be. And if we're going to be serious about reproducing ourselves, about mentoring people, about reflecting God to our children and those close to us, we have got to deliberately walk with God and grow. It is what I am that really counts in my relationships. People come to parenting classes and, oh gosh, I want to really fix these children. And after I go through this program, they're going to be different. After a while, they realize it's all about me. I have to change first if they're going to change. The third thing, or the third point, is that we were here as mentors, as parents, as friends, as co-workers. We're here to teach other people to experience God. You know, we live for many things. We live to, to excel in our career, to succeed financially, to reach our potential. We live for many things. And if I ask you to show me your goals, those things will be there. And they're things that God has put in our hearts. But in doing those things, and in the way in which I do them, am I living and doing them in such a way that people get to experience the reality of God? Is that my goal at the end of all my doing, that people may experience the reality of God? Let's look at Philippians chapter 4, verses 9. And this is what Paul says. Whatever you have learned, received, heard, or seen in me, put into practice. Just do it. Do exactly what you see in me. And then he makes the statement, and the peace of God, the God of peace, will be with you. The God of peace will be with you if you do what you see in me. Questions come up. When I'm with people, what do I talk about? Because in talking, people learn. When I'm with my friends, when I'm with my children, what do I talk about? What is it that's on my heart? What are my passions? What do my friends see in me? What do my children see in me? What do my co-workers see in me? That's a big question. What do they see in me? Okay. Do they see love? Because God is love, and that is acceptance. Do they see that? A love that gives. How much do I give to my friends? How much do I sacrifice, for them? Love's just not a feeling. For God so loved that He gave. Okay? I can feel really bad about my children, but I can give myself. For God so loved that He gave. Am I giving? Is that what people see in my life? Do they see in me a patience that waits on God? Because patience shows that God is real to me, and I'm waiting for His timing. Okay? Do they see a peace of God in my life in difficult circumstances? Because if they see a peace in my life, then God is real for me. That my circumstances are below God and God is above them, and I can rest. In that way, they catch glimpses of who God is. And in those glimpses, they begin to see God. They begin to take their baby steps towards God. Do they see an understanding person? I used to feel that in order to really be influential, in order to really be an impact in a discussion we're having, I've got to be talking, and I've got to be talking sense. Then I realized that the first ministry that we have to each other is to listen and listen. Because if a person is not understood, does not feel understood, then we can't take them anywhere. I'll give you an example. I remember once our daughter struggling with something, and she talked and she cried, and it all came out. When it had all come out, and she had been crying and so on, and we listened and asked questions, she felt understood. Then she said, "What do you think? What do you have to say?" When we started speaking, she started writing. "Stop, slow, I'm writing. She had come to the point of being understood. We could then steer her forward. And so this is a challenge. Take it with you. Listen until you are asked, "What do you think?" Try that with your children. Try that with your spouse. Then you can really steer them forward. Otherwise, you get into that conversation, you're the one who talks, you can't lead them. And then the second thing is that we've really got to accept and embrace people. Jesus accepted, embraced people, and they followed him with all their difficulties. So in this way, God becomes real to people. And so the challenge to me is, can I conduct myself in such a way that I can tell people, put this into practice, and God will be with you. That is a big thing to live for, to communicate God in that way, to be a mentor, to be a discipler, to be a parent in that way. I want to leave you with a verse that captures a lot of what we have shared. It's Acts 22, verses 14 through to 16. And it says, this is somebody who's been sent to Paul. And at Paul's commissioning, as it were, he tells him, "The God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear the words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all the people of what you have seen and heard." So, what do I want you to take away? That you are chosen by God. As you sit here, as you go out in your different activities, you are chosen by God. He has chosen you to know his will, and that is know his heartbeat, what brings a smile to his face. Just know that. And he just really wants you to open his heart out for you to know it. He wants you to hear his word from the Bible on a daily basis. He wants you to see Jesus as you look at that word and express that Jesus to other people. What does he want you to do? He wants you to be, not do witnessing, be a witness, be the mission of what you have heard and seen, so that other people can know who he is. So that is what mentoring, call it discipleship, and parenting is all about. And God holds us to make him a reality in the lives of other people.